for some screaming heavy metal? We rock!
But the evil that men do lives on.
We gonna bang your head!
You are now listening to the Music Mania podcast, a hard-hitting show featuring all things hard rock and heavy metal. And now here are your hosts, the Twins of Chaos, Clint Switzer and Paul Lagana.
Welcome everyone to the hard rock hootenanny that is the Music Mania podcast. Clint Switzer, Paul Lagana sitting in here. We're so happy to have you join us, whether it be on iTunes, downloading for free, or on YouTube. All of our stuff, of course, archived there, Paul. It is great to be here. And thank you for sitting in with me today once again, my man.
Thanks, Clint. Appreciate that very much. We are back again, and we have a great show for you today. The one thing I do want to mention is please hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. Let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, your social media of choice, as I always say. Let us know what's up. Questions, comments, concerns, hate mail, that goes to Paul. And if you have a guest you think you'd love to hear us on the show, hit us up. We will get a hold of that guest and see if we can make it happen for you.
We absolutely want the feedback from you guys, and we will appreciate that.
And we have a huge guest, speaking of, coming on this show today, Paul, as former Alice Cooper band member, great guitar player, Kane Roberts is going to be joining us, talking about his stint in Alice Cooper. Of course, he was there during the Nightmare Returns era, helped co-write songs from Constrictor, Raise Your Fist and Yell, a great time for me for Alice Cooper, that mid to late 80s run, which was different for Alice, kind of a different turn visually and stylistically and certainly musically. So going to get into all things about his career. Kane Roberts got the Rock and Roll Fantasy coming up with Paul Stanley. He's written with Berlin. He's Rod Stewart, Paul Stanley from Kiss. He's kind of done it all, and that look was very important to Kane on stage, yeah. Man, his stage presence.
Yeah, he got into bodybuilding back in the early 80s, actually before he joined Alice Cooper, and it changed his career and life, and so we're going to get into that with him.
Well, Paul, before we get to bring Kane on, I want to talk to you because, we like to get into some of the pertinent rock and roll related topics before we bring our guests on. And one that keeps crossing my newsfeed, one that I can't get out of my head, is this Guns N' Roses situation, because rumors are swirling. Of course, they got the shows coming up in April in Las Vegas at the new T-Mobile Arena. They got the 21 cities announced for the United States coming up this summer. Kansas City's on that list, by the way. I guess we should probably go to that.
I would think so.
I think we'll be there. You down?
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
Well, so what is your thoughts? Because right now, confirmed, of course, we have Axl reuniting with Duff McKagan and Slash. Beyond that, a lot of rumors. Nothing confirmed. Steven Adler, Gilby Clarke, Izzy Stradlin. Mm-hmm. What do you see kind of playing out here? A lot of rumors.
Right. And that's exactly what they are, just rumors. So until it actually plays out, for me, I'm just going to take kind of a wait and see approach. Rumors are rumors, and like I say, until something is actually substantiated for me, I just wait and see is my best policy.
Are you going to be okay if it's say it's Slash and Duff and Axl, and then on drums is like their current Axl's drummer Frank Ferrer, or Richard Fortas on guitar? Are you okay with kind of supplementing those members?
I am. Obviously Steven Adler was a big part of that. Actually, Matt Storm as well. Whoever's on drums, to me, I just have waited 20 plus years to see this. And
is it too late though? A lot of people are saying the same thing. It's like, hey, this is this lineup. You get these guys reunited to get back together. There's obviously demanding a lot of money. These shows are going to be huge. They're going to be sold out. But would this have been better had it occurred 10, 15 years ago?
Absolutely, it would have. But
here we are.
Yeah, here we are. It's not the case. To me, as I said earlier, to me, we need to get out and see every single show that we can. These reunion tours, to me, will be key.
Can't be choosy. You can't sit there and say,
No.
"Oh well, Steven Adler's not in the band. Forget that." We got to go. We got to go enjoy it. Enjoy the reunion with Slash because it's a collaboration
That's right.
that was extremely important. What the music they made, Appetite for Destruction, one of the biggest rock albums of all time, important for that time period to bridge the gap between hair metal and mainstream rock. This is the Guns N' Roses, maybe not that we, listened to in the 80s, but it's going to be a bombastic show. Axl, who may also be fronting AC/DC.
Again, another rumor.
Another rumor that is maybe some photo evidence surfacing. We're not sure about that. Are you okay with that? I mean, what is Angus thinking?
Now that I'm not okay with, and I'll tell you why. Axl Rose belongs in a whole separate category. AC/DC, Brian Johnson, the sound,
Irreplaceable.
It's totally different than the GNR. GNR came in the late 80s. AC/DC, of course, with the Brian Johnson era, was early to mid 80s. To me, the whole sound would be different with Axl.
Well, it's going to be, and I think maybe this is Angus's way of saying thank you, goodbye. Hopefully, had he brought in like a younger singer that we don't really know, like maybe they try to go forward with this. But I think Axl, it's just kind of a novelty thing. Like, hey, Axl Rose is going to play these shows, and we're going to go out, and that's it.
Right. Now
I can't imagine him singing Highway to Hell right now. I just can't.
Well, they have 10 dates left on this tour, and they're scrambling. So to me, how about guest singers? To me, that would be all right. Maybe not.
Like different ones?
Yeah, different singers themselves. I heard that might happen as well.
Yeah, that's still on the table, and I think I'd rather that than I think if we saw the last show with Brian Johnson in Kansas City. That's the last show maybe AC/DC will ever play with Brian Johnson. If I was going to one of these 10 shows though coming up and I had a ticket, I'm sitting here going, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling right now. Like, I guess I'll go to this Axl Rose fronted thing just because it's kind of a cool novelty. I just don't know how I'd feel as a fan going.
To me,
probably get the refund on.
Right. All right. And this comes on the heels of Guns N' Roses getting back together, which they should stick with that. He should stick with that. AC/DC, I fully understand they want to placate the fans, but Axl Rose to me is just not a good fit.
And with that, we want to go ahead and welcome today's special guest. He is a former bandmate of Alice Cooper's, legendary guitar player, Mr. Kane Roberts. Kane, you are the fourth Alice Cooper Band alumni to join us here on the Music Mania podcast. So congratulations for that. Welcome to the show. How's everything going, man?
Hey, that's great. Hopefully, I'll be the best one, to join up. I mean, I don't know who else you talk to. I mean, if it was Ken Mary, I totally got him beat.
Ken was definitely one of them, so we'll be sure to pass that information along, of course. But I'll tell you what, Kane, before we get into some of your past accolades, I want to talk about what you got going on now, man. Anything coming up for you on the horizon here?
Yeah, it's really funny. Over the last few years, what happened was Kip Winger called me up, and, I never stopped playing guitar, writing, or any of that stuff. I just got kind of sick of the music business. So, I ended up, he called me because one of this rock and roll fantasy camp thing that he'd been doing literally for 10 years, I didn't even know it. And I always thought that was going to be something that was kind of lame. It looked like, some sort of weird thing where you go and you're teaching people and making believe there's this whole rock thing going on. And I guess one of the quote-unquote rock star counselors kind of messed up. So Kip called me up and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm staring at a wall drooling. So he said, why don't you come out and, you want to do one of the camps? So I said, okay, and I had no idea what it was. And I went there, and it was a bunch of executives. That was my band. Those were my campers, so to speak. I had no idea what was going to happen. And then the guy said, by the way, at 1 o'clock, Zach Wilde's going to come in. So Zach came in, and he played a song with them. The next day, Stevie Vai came in, and he played a song with them. Wow. And then it was like Vince Neil and all the. I mean, it turned out to be like a totally amazing thing. And then we played a show at the Whiskey A Go Go with with the band. So it's a great experience for them. And then any of the guys that teach at those things, whether it's Tracy Dunn's or Rudy Sarzo or any of those people, they'll tell you that there's a lot of give and take. The counselors get a lot out of it as well. And what that sort of did to me is it got me into just, doing the hang with other musicians, and I started recording again. And, this year I got some events coming, doing like a tour in Europe and I might be doing the Monsters of Rock cruise, and stuff like that. So I'm sort of back in the game, and then I have a recording that I just finished, and we're shooting a video next month, the 16th through the 18th, and it's going to be kind of this, really dark, kind of cinematic type of a video as opposed to a performance thing. So, I got the creative juices going again, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, Kane, I tell you what, you started with Alice Cooper on the Nightmare Returns tour and the Constrictor album. You co-wrote, Constrictor, also Raise Your Fist and Yell. And I just want to go back to that, how you got started with Alice Cooper and how that all came about, because you wound up, forming a band with Kip Winger, Ken Mary, creating kind of a new look and sound for Alice Cooper, who was coming off of rehab at the time, and forging ahead with this kind of new look and sound. And you were a big part of that. Just kind of, how did it all get started? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was in Boston and New York. Actually moved out of my house when I was like 17. I was living in Boston, and really weird is that in the next building over, Aerosmith was actually they all lived together in this apartment. So and they were kind of like a big deal in Boston. I was really young. I mean, but they actually were living there, and then they split. And that was my first sort of experience with true rock stars. I mean, those guys were walking around with fur coats, and they just had this image that was way off the hook from anything I had ever experienced. So I started getting into it, from that angle. Like, could I ever do that? And I've been playing guitar since I was like 13, and so I started. I moved to New York, and I put together a band and everything, and then I had these demos and all that stuff, and suddenly I got a call to go down and meet Alice Cooper. And I went down there, I walked into the office, it was Shep Gordon's Alive Enterprises. That time it was in New York, and first I was sort of, directed into this office with Bob Ezrin, and it was a typical scene, dude. It was like this huge window, and a big desk, and he's sitting behind the desk, and I sit on a chair, and I swear to God, the chair was really low, so that I felt like really tiny. And it was like the Wizard of Oz or something. And Ezrin, who ended up being, absolutely one of my best friends, and he's the guy that hooked me up with Rod Stewart and Alice and Berlin and all these different projects and everything. But he said to me, he goes, Kane, you're 50% of a great writing team. That was like the first words out of his mouth, and I went, okay, I believe you. So I had to go through sort of his vetting process to see if I was cool. And then I walked into the main office, and it was Shep and Alice, and you just got this feeling like you were with people that changed worldwide culture. They changed music. They just had such a huge influence. So, and I always say this. I mean, I was never nervous because I was, I wasn't arrogant, but I always felt like once you get into the jet stream, you just gotta kind of like go with the flow, and hopefully, you got the skills and whatever to be able to handle whatever situation comes at you. And if you can't, you just gotta go back to the woodshed and practice. Well, the first thing that happened was Alice and I became best friends. We started hanging out, and immediately we drove to upstate New York. And this is what they always did with us. They would rent hotel rooms and a studio, and we would just start working together. And that's what happened. And Alice and I just, hooked up in a really great way. And then, maybe the greatest move I ever made in terms of business was Ezrin and I talked about what I should charge to do the gig. This is a little bit of sort of an insight I don't really tell people. And I came up with this number. Shep called me up, and he said, you know what, that's a little high. So the best thing I ever did, and I'm not kidding you guys, is I said, you know what, I trust you, Shep. And I said,
Yep.
You tell me what you want to pay me, and I'm there. And I didn't feel it as a sign of weakness. I felt it because I really did get a vibe off of Shep. It was like a very special guy. And then suddenly, I'm living in California. I got a car, I got a record deal. He totally sort of tricked me out. And then the next thing I know, I'm in Maui, and Alice and I are writing Constrictor, the first record we did together. Now, in terms of how the show that you saw, Alice did come out of rehab, and he and I were sitting there talking, and I said, dude, the one thing that you don't want to do is come back having survived rehab. You got to come back with just like the nuclear Alice, like in other words, you just ate up that whole rehab thing. Your past got consumed and turned you into like a monster. We got to come back and compete with, be it Ozzy or Metallica or whoever, just come back heavy. And you know, I said, it's going to rankle some of your old traditional fans. I said, but you got to come back and explode. And you can tell on that video, like you hear Alice go, you're welcome to my nightmare, and the crowd goes crazy, and it sounds like the original album. And then when he hits the stage, the band is just like balls out heavy. I think it was a really great re-entry for Alice into the rock and roll heavy metal orbit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to ask you about. I'm glad you brought that up because there was a musical change. It was it was tangible. You could hear it, you could see it. The look was different. I mean, Alice Cooper had went away in the early '80s. He comes back, and all of a sudden, you've got the hard rock, hair metal, whatever you want to call it, was popular at that time. I mean, how you were the musical director? You became the musical director of that Alice Cooper band. How instrumental were you in kind of that change that happened sonically and visually?
Yeah, well, first of all, Alice is a very giving artist. In other words, he's one of those guys where he has to have an inspired moment. He can sit down and do the job. I mean, you think about it, they point him, towards the stage. He walks out there, and every night he kills it. So he's one of those guys that can call up whatever. But Alice, to me, in the true artistic sense, has his moments where you got to have your pen and paper ready because it's just going to come really fast. And that's what would happen working with him. So, as we started developing the sound, Alice would just suddenly, he would get in the mode and just start writing, and we'd start conceiving what the show was. Now, in terms of the music, my first goal was to come up with a heavy sound, try my best not to step on the toes of these sacred songs that were put together by great musicians. I always had respect for Glenn Buxton and Michael Bruce and Dennis and Neil. I mean, those guys were just, they were icons to me. Especially, one of the things about Dennis Dunaway, he was one of the first low slinger bass players that had the bass down at his knee. I mean, I play like Johnny Cash, like a total dweeb. I feel like I should have a pocket protector. You know what I mean? My guitar is up so high. So we started coming up with all that, and then the next phase for me was to pick the band. And fortunately, I got Kip Winger because I knew how much of a great bass player he was, and his voice was incredible, and just a really heavy creative force. Ken Mary on drums. I mean, you couldn't get a better guy for that. Paul Taylor, and then Devlin Seven, the other guy whose backup was like a fully traditional heavy blues guy, but he can play everything. So he was sort of the backup guy, and he added sort of the element of sort of the traditional original stuff. If you listen to his sound on some of that stuff, and then finally, my last phase was Joe Gannon and that crew came up with the classic Alice Cooper stage show. So I had to write music that was timed with all of that. So it was kind of a big job, but I never felt it as being big because you can imagine, it's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just fully jazzed to even be there. I felt really lucky.
Well, it's funny because my introduction to the Alice Cooper band was, in fact, this era, and my favorite Alice Cooper album to this day is Constrictor. So, the connection with Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, I mean, you had the songs Man Behind the Mask, and you had Hard Rock Summer on there, and I've always wondered, I mean, Hard Rock Summer did not even appear on the Constrictor album, as it were, and, Man Behind the Mask, I think, went through some changes. The original version became the song Trick Bag, and then the rest of the song was on the movie.
Yeah, I love that song because, that was, it was really funny. Alice wrote that. We were by the pool at Shep's place. I'm not kidding. I'm not coming up with these images. And he just wrote all those lyrics at once. It's like, I'm a rock and roll vagabond, a streetwise runaway, or something like that.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And it was just sort of pouring out of him. And then, for example, to me, one of the most brilliant lyrical moments on any of the things I've ever done with Alice is Prince of Darkness. And it was one of those moments, if you listen to those lyrics, whether or not you like the song, if you sort of sit down and just either read the lyrics or listen to him singing, they're absolutely brilliant. Even just the timeline of where each concept hits the map, you know what I mean? And he wrote that all literally in 10, 15 minutes. It was one of those moments where, I just got everything down. I just got it all written down. Back in those days, we used we would burn wood and get charcoal and write on parchment. No, I'm kidding. But
It's like what?
All that stuff back together, and then that song "Hard Rock" is one of those examples of just Alice just sort of spilling out, all this like cool stuff, and then we put it to music. And actually, I think "Hard Rock Summer in the USA" is that what the one you were talking? Oh no, I'm thinking about that song for the Rodney Dangerfield movie. I forget what the name of it
Back to School was it back or Great American Success Story? I think was that one. And then you had Hard Rock Summer, which was in the soundtrack for Jason Lives, but it was not on the Constrictor album. I just always loved that song and wondered.
Yeah, I think there's a car chase scene or something in that song.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, great song. I just always wonder why it didn't make the actual album cut, because it was just kind of fit perfectly. I mean, you had Thrill My Gorilla.
Those are decisions. Very often, those are decisions that come from some other place other than me and Alice. I mean, our first version of The Man Behind the Mask was very heavy. I mean, one of the things we had. He crawled out of his hole just to rock and roll.
Yes.
Love it.
Kind of like, and so we first had it, and then the record company and the movie company said, they'd like to have a song that had a little bit more what's called contemporary hit radio potential. So Alice and I got kind of bullied with that. And you want to hear something really funny? Frank Mancuso Jr. took over the production of all the Friday the 13th.
Yep.
And he's a total metalhead, right? So he comes to the studio, and I'm sitting there in the room with him, and Wagner is mixing The Man Behind the Mask, and he's listening to it going, he said, "Is this the song?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Kane." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Does it ever get heavy?" No. No. And he went, "Okay." And he left. I mean, he was just so disappointed it wasn't the first version. It was really funny.
Kane, you stopped working with Alice Cooper after the Trash album. What were your reasons for moving on then?
Well, we finished Raise Your Fist, and then we did the tour, which was, it was a very dark tour. They tried to ban it in a couple of places. There was one show we did in Munich that if Alice did some of the things that he was doing as part of the show, they were going to shut it down. There were all these armed guards behind us, just in case Alice got a little too bloody. And they tried to ban the show in England and all that stuff. And it was really like, for me, it was an experience where we were in a total culture of violence. And but it had I thought the musicians and the stuff that we wrote was just very intense and really executed really well. So, and then that tour came to an end, and then I got the record deal on Geffen. So I started concentrating on that, and Alice and I, we lived together a lot. Of course, he lived with his wife and everything, but whenever we were writing together, he would come to my house in Woodland Hills. And it was really funny because we kind of decided it was time to sort of go our separate ways, because I really had to concentrate on this Geffen record, and Alice had some other stuff, and his relationship with Desmond was starting to blossom, as was mine with Desmond in terms of writing and stuff like that. So one day it was 8 in the morning, I was laying in bed, and he knocks on my door. This is at my house in Woodland Hills, and I wake up and I look, and Alice is standing there with bags in each hand, and he goes, "I'm leaving you."
No.
It was like a scene out of a movie or something. It was really funny. But it was right before I went in the studio for the Saints and Sinners record on Geffen.
Oh yeah. And the Saints and Sinners, that's two great solo albums, and I believe Alice helped you write some lyrics for that first one, and then maybe even was it John Bon Jovi or on the second one that Does Anyone Really Fall in Love Anymore?
I'm sorry. There was a song written by Desmond, John Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora, and Diane Warren, which is, it's kind of a lineup, but it's that ballad, "Does Anybody Really Fall in Love?" And John had recorded a great version as a demo, but for some reason he never took it into the studio as one of their main songs. So, I didn't know Cher had done it, but so when I got the song, I said, "Yeah, this is really beautiful." And then, it's really funny. I kind of lucked out on the performance. I thought I hit a lot of good things on that. It turned out to be a great version, and it actually, had legs in terms of radio and going up the charts and all that stuff. So it ended up being like a good moment for me. So yeah. So that's how it happened. And then since then, actually, just as a side note, Alice and I worked on a song. One of the songs that I just finished recording that we're going to shoot a video on. So, he and I still are, just the best of friends, and we still talk and hang out and stuff. I actually got him to do one of rock and roll fantasy camps thing. So that was kind of fun.
You did an interview with Metal Sludge back in 2013 where you credit bodybuilding for helping turn your life around. How did you get into bodybuilding? How important was that image to you?
Yeah. Well, it's really funny. I mean, I'm not saying, maybe somebody did kick sand in my face and I had to try to get big. I just never looked at it like that. I was never somebody to be like a bully and do any of that stuff in terms of like being strong and looking a certain way and trying to intimidate people. So it didn't come from that angle. It just became sort of one of the things that Alice and I share is that when we get into something, we kind of get, overtly obsessive about it. And, he's that way with golf. He loves to go shopping. I mean, when we were touring, Alice would, every day, whatever town we were in, we would take a walk through the mall. And, sometimes he'd come back and he'd say, dude, look what I got. And, I'm saying, yeah, it's Levi's. You can get them at like Macy's, at Van Nuys, it's not a big deal. But that's just the way he is. He gets into something and he just hammers it, which is great because, that's the way he's been about his music and his singing and all sorts of stuff. So I just started lifting. Of course, guitar was always my main thrust in life. It was there since I was very young. And the bigger I got, I started thinking, what I like about this is it goes against the grain. And I think it's one of the reasons why Shep and Alice and all the people involved wanted me in their team, because Alice had always gone against what people thought was acceptable. And most guitar players were very thin and frail and almost effeminate looking, which is fine. The whole glam thing, I was totally into it. But I decided, like, if the camera passes over me once, people will remember who I am if I keep going down this road. And of course, the other pressure was I had to be a great guitar player. And I'll tell you something, when I was in Boston, I thought I was unbelievable. When I was living in New York, I thought I was incredible. I came out to California and totally humbling experience for me. I'd go to the clubs and somebody would just be tearing it up. So I just went way back into taking lessons and practicing every day because, I had a lot of competition. So, it was a real sort of eye-opener for me. But yeah, when I got into the whole physique thing, I think that was my angle. It was just I got obsessed with it, and then I started thinking, this might even work for me. And, think of it this way, after working with Alice, I did my own stuff. Who really would hire me after that? And, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was thinking probably Alice Cooper's the only band that ever would have hired me. When I don't think I've ever said this in an interview, but when I committed to Alice, and because of the way, that story I told you with Shep, they were, I gave them my word, and that was it. And of course, I felt, blessed that I was even out there working with these guys. You can imagine. I did have that attitude, I belong here. It was the same thing when I went up to write with Paul Stanley. I wasn't afraid to do it. My only concern was that, I had some great ideas and I'd be able to execute and stuff like that. But, it just became a part of the flow of the situation for me. Well, I got a phone call, this is after being in L.A. for a while, and it was Tina Turner's manager.
Wow.
And he said, Tina would love to have you come out. We'd love to have you join the band. And they said, we'll pay you $2,500 a week plus this so-and-so per diem. So I said, you know what, I really can't. But, thank you so much, and tell her it's an honor and all that stuff. He calls back next week, and he said, how about $3,000? And I said, no, I really can't because I'm committed to this. Dude, it got up to like $5,000. And all I could think of was, I can't do it. But if I didn't have the Alice Cooper thing, I would have said yes to the first offer. So I just thinking to myself, what a crappy businessman I am. It's like the power of the word no, you know what I mean? But I was unable to do the job. And, a friend of mine is the sax player was with Tina at the time, that guy Tim Capello, that kind of sax player. He was actually
Yeah.
He was a buddy of mine in New York, so it was really funny. And he was calling me going, dude, you got to do the gig. And I said, I can't, so.
Yeah, he did the scene in Lost Boys. Wasn't that him? They did that scene in Lost Boy, the movie Lost Boys. Yeah.
That was him, yeah. And, the other thing is, I didn't want this, like, Mae West, like, muscle thing going on either, which, what I mean? Like Tina Turner's in the middle, and Tina's on Tim's on the left, I'm on the right. I didn't want to be part of that type of thing.
Well-
I chose it.
Well, Kane, I don't think I'm ever going to hear the song "Private Dancer" quite the same ever again, my man. I'll tell you, but I tell you what, you've been so gracious with your time. I can't thank you enough for joining us today, talking about your career and all the things that you've accomplished. And it's just it's been great to catch up with you. And I just cannot thank you enough for the time, man. We got to catch up again down the future, maybe at one of the cruises or something like that.
Camp would be good.
That'd be totally hot, and I really enjoyed this. You guys' questions were actually, a little different from what I normally get, and that's always a huge value when you're doing this stuff. And when I finish the song and the video and stuff, I'll hit you guys up and send it your way. So yeah, I'd like to hear what you think of it, and maybe we can do another chat or whatever. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. So thanks.
Please do, Kane. We appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely send us the song. Can't wait to check out the song and the video. We'll promote it for you, and we'll maybe have another chat and get some more promotion going on a future podcast, my man.
Sweet.
Hey, Kane, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
All right. Good luck, you guys.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks, Kane.